to rebuild either. So I'm just curious as to, that.
No,
aspect.
I mean, and you're right there. Also, let me correct my own spelling. It is the conventional Bryan, Brian Brown, defense coordinator at Louisville. But I get your point because Florida State also isn't tradition. People forget this. Florida State was a women's university until like 1950. I don't want to put a number on it, but it's fairly recently that they became a co-ed university, and even more recently that they were good. Like they weren't good until Bobby Bowden showed up, and Bobby Bowden had already been at West Virginia, right? So in many ways, Florida State is actually a pretty decent comp here because Florida State is getting state money, right? It's one of the flagship universities. People forget Miami is a private school, right? It's Florida and Florida State. And Florida wasn't very happy about Florida State, right? To say nothing of what FAMU used to be. So I look at Kansas and you got one other school. It's the Ag school. It's no disrespect to the Ags out there, but like Kansas gets the bulk of the money. Kansas gets the prestige. Kansas gets to build off of its basketball reputation, which is up there with UCLA and Duke, right? Duke, another one of those programs that wasn't any good until fairly recently. Like Coach K shows up and you're good, right? Meanwhile, Duke's football program actually had more tradition and more accolades than the basketball program, and Steve Spurrier won a Heisman there. Imagine a Duke quarterback winning a Heisman. Like, that's still wild to me.
That's wild.
Yeah, but like, I wanted to bat that around because the Big 12 is only going to be as good as its bottom-dwelling teams, just like every other conference. Like I know that we talk a lot, and we should, about the teams at the top of the conference and what those teams do as a reflection of how good the conference is. Like, we don't talk about the Pac-12 being good because the Pac-12 has not had a representative in the college football playoff since 2016, right? Whereas we talk about the SEC being good because Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Florida's not actually been to the college football playoff. Let me back up. LSU, right? And we can remember times in which Mississippi State and Ole Miss were top 5 programs. Meanwhile, West Virginia felt like it was getting good. Then a bunch of their kids went into the portal, right? But we'll see. Mm-hmm. Matt Wells is banking on skilled labor. Got a bunch of super seniors, right? Got a new quarterback in Tyler Shuck to go. We'll see what that looks like. We're starting.
I'm worried about Matt Wells, by the way.
Why are you worried about Matt?
Because the AD. That whole basketball thing of losing Chris Beard, if the AD gets canned, those Texas Tech people are upset right now, man. They're going through some things.
Yo, hey, look, Kirby Hokut's presser. Yo, like, no disrespect, but I was like, yeah, man, like you jaded, like you didn't, like it's
scorned,
man, like it's I don't want to go too far off on this, but like
I'm sorry.
And I was because I'm trying to pull back how I really feel about Kirby Hokut saying the things he said about Chris Beard. Like, this man wouldn't even return my phone calls. I was blowing him up. He wouldn't block my number, so he wanted to see me crying. Like, all of that, and I get it because like Kirby Hokut dealing with some boosters that were ready to go back a truck up to Art Briles. All right, like that was out there. And then Matt Wells had an opening in offensive coordinator because he fired David Yost, and everybody's like, "Yo, you're not gonna hire Briles, right? Because they're gonna elevate that man right up underneath you." And he's like, "No, I'm gonna go get Sonny Cumbie. I'm gonna make that work." But like, I feel you. I understand. Anytime your AD feels like he's on shaky ground, you should feel like you're on shaky ground. But I want to actually move around the Big 12 a little bit more here.
Go ahead.
How do you feel about the Chandler Morris situation at Texas Christian?
So it's funny you bring that up, considering his daddy is now the head coach of the Allen Eagles.
Yeah, man.
And I'm just, it's just one of those things where it's just like decency at some point. Like, I understand the whole, well, Lincoln feels a certain type of way about people transferring within the conference and things of that sort. But like, we're talking about a kid that is going to his home area. I mean, not granted, TCU's in Fort Worth, and I know he's more of a Highland Park kid or whatever, but
that means something to y'all folks down there in Dallas.
Yeah, that's why I made the distinction.
Okay, I was about to say everywhere else,
not one area.
I was about to say everywhere else that doesn't actually matter. But yeah, I get it, and we appreciate you, Dallas folks, and I understand some of y'all would go feel some kind of way about being lumped in with Fort Worth. I get it.
Because I've seen some other people say, well, he was just let him go home to Fort Worth. I'm like, whoa. He is not from Fort Worth. It's very, very different.
The money different. The housing different. The streets different.
Right. It just looks like, because, look, let's be real. 6 straight Big 12 titles. And yes, I'm the one that said it, not you. That's fine. But 6 straight Big 12 titles.
Ain't no nationals in there. Ain't no nationals in there.
No. But we're talking Big 12 right now because this is a Big 12. This is a Big 12 matter.
Okay.
And you're basically the king of the court, right? And it's just like not even extending TCU mercy it's more about Chandler Morris, right? And what you promise those kids when you recruit them and wanting the best for them. And it's a bad look in 2021 when you have kids, and this is a greater issue I'm going to speak on real quick, but kids hitting the portal and kids moving around. Some of these kids are committing to schools that they've never really even visited. And I'm not saying that's the case for Chandler Morris at all, but, there's just so much, everything's so fluid in the world right now. And somebody wanting to get a little closer to home, stay within the conference, but the competitive advantage, like, people transfer all over the place, and no one knows that better than Lincoln Riley does. Nobody knows that better than he does in terms of benefit. So the block now, how his father plays into this now being the head coach of the Allen Eagles, I'm curious to get, your thoughts there, because I do think, from the political game that they have to play in recruiting, that matters.
And I said it as much. I made like one real reaction video to this news, but my point is Riley looks dirty doing it. I don't like it. Having your principles is one thing, but this is a man who would tell everybody up and down that penalizing kids for smoking weed is draconian. And I would say penalizing a kid that wants to transfer in conference is also draconian because A, you're a quarterback whisperer. You have one of the best offenses, the best offense over the last 10 years, right? Period. If you take him all the way back to East Carolina, nobody else factors into this discussion. Every quarterback you throw out there can play, and you can't throw everyone out there. Now, that said, Chandler Morris scored a touchdown in the Big 12, got to run one in, right? Like in the game that mattered, the championship. But also, I just believe that a man making $6 million a year, telling a child who has 5 years to play for, that he cannot go play football is wrong. And then you take into account, you mentioned, the Allen Eagles and Chad Morris going back basically where he built his reputation, state of Texas, as a high school football coach. Allen gave Oklahoma Kyler Murray by way of Texas A&M, but still, Allen gave Theo Weiss to Oklahoma, right? He's going to be your starting wide receiver alongside Jaden Hazelwood, Marvin Mims, and them. Allen put Greg Little out there. I mean, as we know who Allen is, right? $60 million stadium renovation a couple years ago, or maybe it's like 10. I can't place it. But you want to recruit there. And more than that, you want to recruit the area as much as anything else. And we know that the way in which other coaches recruit negatively against you, and we know how high school football coaches also hold grudges. Like, my favorite is Brandon Harris came out of a place in Louisiana not too long ago, because Brandon Harris is now on staff at Texas. That's how old I am.
Shout to Brandon Harris, new director of recruiting at University of Texas.
Bro, I remember watching Brandon Harris throw passes at a rivals camp in Dallas. That is how old I am. I'm going, my God. Anyway, had a coach, Nick Saban asked, what can we see him? It's like, are you offering him? It's like, yeah, well, sure. It's like, okay, how many quarterbacks you offered? I don't know, 7. Okay, so you haven't offered anybody. Like, they keep these notes, right? They keep these notes on you, and they will bring these things up, because the thing that I think people forget is not every high school is pushing out blue chippers every single year. They might get one every 5 or 6 years that Oklahoma, Texas, Alabama, LSU wants. And they want to know that kid is going to play football, preferably every down, but also at the position that he played in high school. Like, one of the things I get the biggest kick out of is finding out which kids are playing out of position. Like,
Ooh, yeah.
my favorite is Buki, right? He's going at Washington, and I've told my Washington friends, if Jimmy Lake puts him at slot corner, I'm flipping a table because that man is a boundary corner. Okay, that's who he is. But how many quarterbacks do we know about playing linebacker, safety, defensive back, playing running back, wide receiver, right? At Allen, you get to put those dudes straight into your scheme. Like, there is no moving them around. They're that good. And I gotta believe, Chad Morris, who was in the stands watching his kid play against Kansas on a bye week, is going to forget that you were not going to let his kid play college football. Like, what parent would forget that? What parent would be like, no, it's a business thing about my kid? No. So I just didn't see it as a win for Lincoln. And I get having principles, and I get, fall for anything or whatever it is people say. But this is not the hill to die on. Not for me anyway.